The heavy wooden doors of the divorce courthouse swung open beneath the bright morning sun, and every eye turned toward the exhausted single father carrying nothing but a worn leather backpack and a small paper bag containing his daughter's favorite teddy bear. His ex-wife's attorneys had celebrated inside, convinced they had stripped him of everything he owned. Reporters whispered that his life was over. But before anyone could leave the courthouse steps, the thunderous sound of spinning rotor blades echoed across the city skyline. A sleek black helicopter descended onto the open plaza across the street, and security officers immediately rushed to clear a landing zone. The crowd stared in stunned silence as the aircraft landed directly in front of the man everyone believed had just lost everything. None of them knew that what looked like the end of his story was actually the beginning of the greatest surprise of their lives. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, perseverance, and second chances can change a person's life, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Kindness Paradise. Your support helps us continue bringing emotional stories that remind us never to judge someone by a single difficult moment. Owen Carter had spent the previous 6 years raising his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, with quiet determination. After his marriage slowly fell apart under financial pressure and endless misunderstandings, he chose peace over endless courtroom battles. Rather than fighting over every possession, he focused on protecting Hazel from bitterness. By the time the divorce was finalized, he had surrendered the family house, most of his savings, and nearly everything he had built during the marriage. Friends questioned his decisions, believing he had been defeated, but Owen carried himself with remarkable calm because there were truths he had never revealed to anyone. Years before meeting his former wife, Owen had served as a rescue pilot for a humanitarian aviation organization, flying emergency missions into remote areas after floods, earthquakes, and wildfires. During one dangerous rescue, he saved the life of an elderly entrepreneur whose private aircraft had crashed in the mountains. The grateful man insisted on rewarding him, but Owen accepted nothing except a simple handshake, believing that helping another human being should never require payment. What Owen never discovered was that the elderly man quietly remembered that act of courage long after they parted ways. Life eventually led Owen away from aviation and into a modest engineering career so he could spend more time with his family. He rarely spoke about his rescue missions, and even Hazel knew only a few bedtime stories about the helicopter her father once flew. To her, he was simply the loving father who packed school lunches, fixed broken bicycles, and never missed a school recital. Even during the painful divorce, he smiled whenever she looked at him, determined that she would never carry the burden of adult conflicts. As Owen stepped onto the courthouse sidewalk, the helicopter's pilot climbed out and walked directly toward him. The crowd watched with growing curiosity as the pilot respectfully handed Owen a sealed envelope bearing the crest of the Astor Global Foundation. Inside was a handwritten letter explaining that the elderly entrepreneur Owen had rescued years earlier had recently passed away. In his final wishes, he had asked his legal team to locate the man who had saved his life and deliver one final gift, not as payment, but as gratitude that had waited many years for the right moment. The letter invited Owen to board the helicopter immediately for a private meeting with the foundation's trustees. Confused yet humbled, he looked toward Hazel, who squeezed his hand with complete trust. Together they climbed aboard while reporters, lawyers, and strangers watched in astonishment. The same people who had pitied him only moments earlier now realized they had never truly known the quiet man walking out of divorce court with nothing more than integrity, compassion, and the love of his daughter. As the helicopter slowly lifted into the clear blue sky, Owen looked down at the courthouse growing smaller beneath them. He believed he had just closed the most painful chapter of his life. He had no idea that, before the day ended, he would discover a legacy that would test not only his character but also his willingness to forgive, rebuild, and believe that kindness given without expectation always finds its way home. The helicopter soared above the sparkling skyline under the warm afternoon sun, carrying Owen Carter and little Hazel toward a destination neither of them could have imagined only an hour earlier. From the window, Hazel watched rivers shimmer below while Owen quietly reread the handwritten letter. Every sentence reminded him of the mountain rescue he had almost forgotten. He had never expected a simple act of compassion performed years ago to return in such an extraordinary way. Yet deep inside, he remained more concerned about giving Hazel a peaceful future than about whatever awaited them. After nearly 40 minutes, the helicopter landed on the private estate of the Astor Global Foundation, where a group of trustees and legal advisors greeted them warmly. The foundation's chairwoman, Eleanor Whitmore, explained that the elderly entrepreneur Owen had rescued years earlier had never forgotten the pilot who risked his own life without asking for recognition or reward. Because the businessman had no children of his own, he had chosen to leave a substantial portion of his humanitarian aviation trust to the man whose selfless courage had inspired him to believe that true heroes still existed. The inheritance was remarkable, but it was not simply money. It included ownership of a fleet of medical rescue helicopters, scholarships for aspiring rescue pilots, and a charitable foundation dedicated to providing emergency air support to isolated communities after natural disasters. The trustees made one thing perfectly clear: the inheritance could only remain with someone willing to continue the mission of serving others before serving themselves. It was not a fortune to be enjoyed in luxury, it was a responsibility to protect lives. Owen stood silently, overwhelmed by the enormous responsibility. Memories of his rescue missions returned with incredible clarity: the frightened families, the dangerous weather, and the countless people who had survived because someone chose courage over comfort. He realized that the greatest gift was not the wealth itself but the opportunity to return to a purpose he had once loved. Looking at Hazel, he saw excitement shining in her eyes as she whispered that her father had always been a real hero, even when no one else knew. Meanwhile, news of Owen's unexpected helicopter departure spread rapidly across social media and local television. Reporters who had earlier described him as a defeated father quickly learned about the extraordinary legacy awaiting him. Even those who had mocked him outside the courthouse began questioning how someone they believed had lost everything could suddenly become the guardian of one of the country's largest humanitarian aviation programs. The truth slowly became clear: Owen had never been rich because of money. His greatest wealth had always been his integrity. As the afternoon came to an end, Owen accepted the trustee's offer, not for personal gain, but because he wanted Hazel to grow up seeing that kindness is never wasted. He promised to expand the rescue program, help communities in need, and ensure that every mission honored the man whose gratitude had made this moment possible. The trustees smiled, knowing they had chosen exactly the right person to carry the legacy forward. If this story is touching your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness always comes back, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Kindness Paradise for more emotional stories about hope, family, and second chances. Special request: please comment, kindness always finds its way home. As the golden sunlight reflected across the helicopters parked on the foundation's runway, Owen gently held Hazel's hand. The hardest chapter of his life had ended at the courthouse, but a far greater journey had only just begun. Neither of them realized that one final surprise awaited before sunset, one that would heal wounds far deeper than any courtroom ever could. The golden evening sun stretched across the foundation's airfield as Owen Carter and Hazel prepared to leave after signing the final documents. Just as they reached the helicopter, Eleanor Whitmore gently stopped them and handed Owen one last envelope. She explained that the late entrepreneur had written a personal letter to be opened only after Owen accepted responsibility for the humanitarian foundation. With trembling hands, Owen unfolded the handwritten pages. The elderly man wrote that saving a life is the greatest investment anyone can ever make because compassion continues earning dividends long after money loses its value. He thanked Owen for proving that true character is revealed when no cameras are watching and no rewards are expected. The final paragraph asked Owen to promise that every future rescue mission would remind people that hope can arrive from the sky when all other hope seems lost. Deeply moved, Owen accepted the promise without hesitation. From that day forward, the rescue helicopters flew not only to disaster zones but also to forgotten rural communities where medical help often arrived too late. Children needing emergency surgery, elderly patients trapped by floods, and families stranded after powerful storms all received life-saving assistance because one humble father had chosen service over comfort. News organizations soon began sharing remarkable stories of lives saved by the foundation, but Owen never sought interviews or personal recognition. He always reminded reporters that every successful mission belonged to the brave crews, doctors, nurses, and volunteers who risked everything for complete strangers. Hazel grew up surrounded by those inspiring examples. Whenever school holidays arrived, She visited the rescue base, helping organize donated supplies and writing encouraging notes for children recovering in hospitals. Watching her father comfort frightened families taught her that genuine greatness is measured by kindness rather than wealth. Although the inheritance had made their financial worries disappear forever, Owen ensured his daughter understood that money should always remain a tool for helping others, never a reason to feel superior. Months later, Owen unexpectedly crossed paths with his former wife outside a children's charity event supported by the foundation. She had quietly followed news reports about the humanitarian missions and finally realized how badly she had underestimated the quiet strength of the man she once believed had failed. Owen welcomed her with respect, showing no bitterness despite everything that had happened. He encouraged Hazel to continue loving both parents without carrying the burden of old conflicts. That simple act of forgiveness became another lesson his daughter would remember for the rest of her life. The foundation continued expanding across the country, adding new helicopters, rescue crews, and medical programs every year. On the entrance wall of the headquarters, visitors could read a bronze plaque bearing the words from the late entrepreneur's final letter: "The greatest fortune belongs to those who save lives without asking what they will receive in return." Every pilot who joined the organization paused to read those words before beginning their first mission, understanding that compassion, not profit, was the true purpose of their work. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness can change lives. Leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Kindness Paradise so together we can continue spreading stories of hope, courage, and second chances. Special request: please comment, "The greatest wealth is a kind heart." As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, one of the rescue helicopters lifted gracefully into the evening sky on another emergency mission. Owen stood beside Hazel, watching it fade into the distance with quiet pride. The world believed he had walked out of divorce court with nothing, but in truth he had walked away carrying the only treasures that truly mattered: his integrity, his daughter's unwavering love, and a heart that never stopped choosing kindness. In the end, those priceless gifts brought him a future far richer than anything money alone could ever buy.